I'm John McQuay with 8541 Tactical, and this is Mail Call Mondays, the show that answers your questions about precision rifles, optics, and equipment. Welcome to another Mail Call Mondays. I know we haven't had one in a couple of weeks, and that's because I actually took a break and went on a family vacation. If you guys have been watching our Instagram feeds or our Facebook photos, we've pretty much been all over. We went up to see some friends up in Canada, went and spent some time around Halifax, and then swung all the way down the eastern seaboard to Florida and spent some time at my folks' house with my kids, just enjoying the Florida sun and the ocean. Now we're back and we need to actually get into doing some work here. Since nothing was firearms related on my vacation, I'm kind of recharged, ready to get back into things. We have got a couple of exciting things going on here at the shop. If you guys watch the Facebook feed, we just recently purchased a new camera system that we'll be using. It's a Panasonic Lumix GH4. I can't speak. The Lumix GH4 is really oriented a little bit more towards video than the current cameras that we're using. We use mostly Canon cameras. We use a 60D, which is what you're watching me to film this show on, and I also use a T3i, which is a little bit less expensive camera that we use in the field, so if it gets damaged, we're not out a ton of cash. Well, we went with the GH4 because it allows us to do a little bit cooler stuff with the video, and it's also 4K capable. So when we get to a point where we have a good delivery medium for 4K, we start to get a little bit more popular 4K TVs and stuff out there, then we are ready to make the switch over to 4K. And that camera system and the new lens should be arriving sometime this week. So I'll really be excited to get that out, and we'll probably start shooting with it as soon as I can figure out all the buttons on the new rig. So that's what we've got coming. Now let's get to the topic of today's show. A little while back I went over what I carry in my day-to-day grind as a police officer, what I carried on my belt, what I carry in my pockets. I've also previously gone over what my patrol rifle is and how it's set up. And I mentioned in those previous videos that I also carry a designated marksman rifle in my car. And you guys asked time and time again if I would go over what my designated marksman rifle is and how it's set up. So I figured I'd do that on this Mail Call Mondays. Now, to let you guys know kind of how things are structured in our department, just about any officer that desires to do so can apply to carry a patrol rifle. They'll be sent to the training to learn how to safely operate the rifle and to do a qualification test. And once they've qualified, then they're able to carry either a department-owned or a personally owned patrol rifle, which is usually a AR-15 in 5.56 or 223 caliber. I'm not going to get into the whole requirements of what those rifles have to be, but they're pretty lenient on what you can have. So you can set it up for close range or you can set it up for intermediate range. Most of our systems, though, and what I recommend is that officers set them up so that they can use them at close range, because most police engagement distances are contact to 7 yards. So you want a patrol rifle that's set up that you can still get some punch close in. Now, the opposite end of the spectrum, we have our SWAT snipers who are equipped with mostly Remington 700 bolt-action rifles in a 20-inch barrel. And those offer a little bit more punch, they offer great accuracy, and they offer a little bit more standoff range in a situation where the SWAT snipers are needed. I am no longer a sniper on our SWAT team, so I no longer carry a bolt-action 308. Now, in the middle of there, because it does take a little while for SWAT snipers to deploy and get into position, and there may be situations where the patrol rifle doesn't really work real well. If you have a situation where you have a barricaded suspect behind heavy cover, that kind of thing, then you really want a little bit more punch on the target than you can get with a little 22 caliber bullet out of an AR. And that's where our designated marksman rifles come in. The designated marksman rifles are a select. For our department, we either use M14s or ARs in the .308 caliber, and they are authorized for selected officers who go through the training and complete the qualification. Because I came off of our SWAT team and I was used to shooting .308 rifles, I was selected to be able to carry one of our DM rifles as well. This actually is my personally owned rifle because I already had this rifle set up at the time that I was selected, and using this rifle allowed them to have an extra M14 that can go to another officer. So I went ahead and chose to use my own rifle. Now the rifle I have set here is an Armalite AR10, and some of you guys have heard me speak in the past know that the AR10 moniker irritates me a little bit because people tend to apply it to everything. Really, Armalite is the only company that makes an AR10. It is a trademark name, so legally any AR10 is an Armalite. Only Armalite makes AR10s. That's kind of the way that works. Now the lines have been blurred recently. In previous times, when you're talking about an AR-10, you pretty much were talking about a system that was an AR pattern, shot a .308 or .308 class cartridge, and utilized M14 style magazines. Since Armalite has now revised their product line to utilize the more popular SR25 / PMag style magazines, now that AR10 versus everything else line has kind of blurred again a little bit. But still, you will hear me call AR10s or Armalite's AR10s, and you'll hear me call everything else either by its proper name or a large frame AR. So we'll get the nomenclature down there a little bit and you'll understand what I'm talking about. And the reason why it really is a sticky situation for me, or why it irritates me when people use the incorrect nomenclature, is because not all parts are compatible or can be swapped between the various different large frame ARs. There are some things I can take out of this AR and throw in a DPMS LR308. There's some things that will not go the opposite direction. So it really use the right nomenclature for the right rifle. This is an Armalite AR10 and it is chambered in .308. And I'll go over the different parts I have on here and why I set it up the way it is, and it's changed just a little bit over its service life. First of all, coming up here at the front, we have a POF muzzle brake. This is just a simple single chamber brake. Worked really well. It's fairly effective. It's not the most effective brake out there, but it's effective enough for what I need on this rifle. It's a little bit longer. In the future, if I switch this off, I may go to a shorter AAC single chamber brake just to get a little bit less overall length on the rifle, because I'm really adding more than an inch of length with this brake here. The barrel is an already long barrel. It's a 21-inch Noveske. The barrel is a little bit heavy and it's a little bit long for law enforcement use, but again, it was already set up. This rifle was ready to go before we went through and did our MA10 build and all this stuff, so it has kind of stayed in that same configuration as we've gone along. Now the 21-inch Noveske barrel, we really didn't get excellent accuracy out of it. It's not what I would consider match level accuracy. It's not something I would take to a PRS type match or anything where I'm going to need really sub half-minute angle of accuracy. It is well under 1 minute angle, and I can guarantee that it's going to be accurate enough to do the job at hand, but it's not something where you're going to go out and be able to hit quarter-inch dots. It's not something where I would feel comfortable running a long-range know your limit stage with it. So overall, it's good. We've done a couple of things to try to address the accuracy in it. It had been recrowned. I'm not sure exactly why at this point that it just really has not gotten the best accuracy in the world, but it is what it is. Like I said, it's still a sub MOA rifle. It's still more accurate than pretty much any of the other DM rifles that we have, so it is well suited to the task at hand. And that's really all we're talking about when we're talking about work rifles. You need to suit the tool to the job. You don't need to go crazy overboard. This rifle, as it sits here, is more than capable of making 300-yard headshots, and that is what that would be the limit of what would be legally justifiable, I think, in most situations that I would utilize this rifle in. Now as we come back, you'll notice here on the top, we have a Surefire Millennium weapon light. These were surplus lights. We got a bunch of these from the Army. So we went ahead and put it on a offset mount, and it works just fine. It's got a high power incandescent bulb in it. I would much prefer an LED, but again, this works for the job at hand. I have no problems with intermediate range target identification. So works just fine. I left the clicky button on it. I didn't run a tape switch back here because it's very easy with this setup for me to reach my hand up here on the forend and actuate the button with my thumb. The button is guarded, and since it's up here on the forend, I don't have to worry about accidentally popping a tape switch and activating the light while I'm moving or while I'm getting into position. It's really easy to activate the light when I need it. It's easy to not activate the light when I don't. I don't have to have any kind of extra lockout switch. So that is good to go. Coming back here, we have this set up on an SLR Rifleworks handguard. This is an M-LOK handguard. I previously had a Badger stabilizer handguard up here, which the Badger stabilizer worked really well, but it was extremely heavy. It also did not afford a lot of options for accessory mounting. You could put rails on it in various different spots, but the rails were rather costly, and again, they added a lot of weight. Instead of adding a rail and then having to add an accessory on top of the rail, I prefer systems like the M-LOK or the Key Mod, where you can just add the accessory direct to the handguard without needing an intermediate rail in most instances. On the opposite side that you can't see, I have a flush cup here because I'll be changing this sling over to a front QD, and I'll drop it in that M-LOK flush cup that we have sitting there. On the bottom, I've got a couple of regular sling swivel adapters that go into the M-LOK so that I can mount the Harris bipod and mount my sling back here. We also have a pod lock on here so that I can very quickly get my cant and lock it out if I need to. This is a Harris BRM S6-9, so it does have swivel, and I don't keep the pod lock locked totally down. I keep a little bit of swivel in it, but I like to keep a good deal of tension so that I can swivel it to where I want and it will stay there. The 6-9 bipod I find is really sufficient for most urban situations. I can use it inside of a vehicle, across a hood. I can use it prone, and when it's deployed to its full length, usually it will cover most prone positions I need. If the legs in their fully deployed position are not suitable for the prone position where I decide to set up, then I chose poorly on where I decided to set up. You really don't want to set up on ground that is sloping downwards unless the target is below you, because that makes some really ugly prone positions. It's just not a good thing. So the 6-9 so far has worked in just about everything that I have encountered. Now the SLR Rifleworks handguard, one of the big reasons I went to it is a whole lot lighter than the Badger stabilizer, and the Noveske barrel is really a heavier contour, so it adds a lot of weight out front of the rifle, and the SLR Rifleworks handguard just allowed me to move that center of gravity back towards the rear of the rifle a little bit more. It gave me a little bit better balance, and balance is really important when you may be shooting this rifle in unsteady positions. If I just have to throw it across an improvised barricade and shoot, then the balance is really important. If I was only ever going to use this thing in a bench or prone situation, you can have a big front heavy rifle and it's not a big deal, but when you're starting to throw it around and run and gun, you really need a well-balanced system. And the balance point on rifles I usually like to have just forward of the magazine well, and this one is pretty close. It's a little bit tail heavy now, but that's because we've got the big fat PRS buttstock on the back here. Coming back towards the back, the trigger that I have in here is the Armalite 2-stage trigger. That was what was in this lower half, because I actually purchased the lower receiver group, or the lower receiver already with the trigger in it. So the Armalite two-stage trigger is a little bit heavier. It's been tuned to have all the creep removed from it, but it is more than sufficient for this system overall. I much prefer Geissele SSAE as a duty two-stage trigger to this trigger, and it may eventually get swapped out, but again, it's worked just fine. Coming down below here, I have an Ergo Tactical Deluxe pistol grip, which you've heard me talk before. This is probably my favorite pistol grip for AR type chassis or semi-automatic precision rifles. I will opt for a slimmer grip like the Magpul Mo grip for ARs that I'm going to be running and gunning with that are more CQB type rifles, but for precision ARs I really prefer this grip. It's got a really nice palm swell. It fits my hand really perfectly, and that's the big thing. So it may not be the perfect grip for you, but definitely if you get the chance, try them out because they feel really nice and they work for a pretty good variety of hand sizes. Coming back towards the back here, we have the Magpul PRS, and again, this is the 308 version, so there's a little bit more distance between the receiver and the comb, so that if I had the comb dialed up, the charging handle is not going to run into the comb before it gets to its full stroke. So really important if you build a 308, make sure you use the correct buttstock. The PRS in this instance really isn't doing anything because the comb's all the way down and the length of pull is dialed all the way in. So I could get away with a fixed stock like the Magpul Mo rifle and it would work just fine in this situation and probably lighten the overall system up just a little bit. And I've considered that a couple of times in the past, but again, I run into the situation where overall this rifle works great as it is, and I really don't like to change things on a duty rifle because it causes all kinds of other problems where I have to try to arrange it to where I change it and when I've got a couple of days off so I can get it set up, go back out to the range, verify accuracy, make sure it's reliable, and it just becomes a great big huge pain in the butt to make changes to a work rifle. Coming back up forward here, we have a pry charging handle. I originally put the pry gas buster charging handle on here because I had the intention that this rifle might end up suppressed. I have never actually gone ahead and put the suppressor on here for a couple of reasons. Again, we come into that whole switching things back and forth. I only have 130 caliber suppressor at this time, and I use it in a lot of other situations. So I don't want to put the suppressor on and take the suppressor off constantly. This rifle pretty much lives in the trunk of my police car, so I don't want to have to pull it out and deconfigure it to be able to put parts on another rifle and then put it back together before I go to work. It just becomes a huge problem. So it will stay the way it is. Also, this barrel does not have an adjustable gas block on it, and really to get the most out of a semi-automatic suppressed AR, you need an adjustable gas block. So the pry sits on here now because it really is a nice functioning overall charging handle. It's got a really big latch on the left hand side and it makes it easier for me to charge it on the fly. And when this rifle comes out, generally what happens is I'm grabbing the rifle out of the trunk, and as soon as I lay hands on the rifle, I'm cracking the charging handle to load a round in, and then I'm running to wherever I need to set up to use the rifle. So one last thing on the rifle, I do have a sling on here. This is a custom sling that I designed that I'm working on moving forward to production. So I'm not going to talk a whole lot about it, but a sling is mandatory on a rifle like this. You never know when you're going to have to climb something, get over a fence, or when you're going to have to handle a prisoner now. So the sling allows you to be able to quickly throw the rifle across your back, get it out of the way, and be able to go hands-on. So slings are a big thing for patrol rifles or designated marksman rifles or even law enforcement sniper rifles. Now coming up to the optic here, you guys know I have a ton of different optics. I have a ton of selections on optics, and the one that's on here may be kind of confusing at first. This is a Weaver 3-15. It is a first focal plane optic. It has their enhanced mil-dot reticle in it. At first you may think, okay, I've got so many other choices there. I've got US Optics scopes, I've got Bushnell scopes, I've got some Night Force that are on loan right now, so why would I put a Weaver on this rifle? Well, again, it comes back to that, it works. This Weaver scope works just fine. Most of the time with this rifle, I'm going to be setting up 100 yards from the target. I don't need some super huge high magnification glass. So the 15 power on the top end works fine. It allows me to zoom in and identify targets, identify what's in the target's hand, that kind of stuff. 3 power is great because it gives me a really wide field of view when I'm maybe just across the street. You may be across the street, maybe across the parking lot, you know, so a wide field of view is really a good thing to have. This scope also allows me to dial parallax down. I think it's 25. Well, 35 is the lowest that I can dial parallax on. And that is great because it means that if I'm at 10 power, 3 power, whatever, I can get a nice clear sight picture dialed in. And I can take a precise shot at a very close range. And that is really what we end up working with on the law enforcement side, is we're working with close range precision versus long range. The Weaver 3-15 has locking turrets. The turrets pull up and push down to lock, so I don't have to worry about, while I was riding in the car, rolling a turret when I pull it out of the bag. It's locked down, we're good to go. These turrets are very easy to reset. I just screw the thumb screw off, pull that off, and then I can reset them to wherever I need. So if I'm going out to the range and I'm not shooting the duty ammo that this rifle is zeroed for, then I can very quickly slip the turrets for the ammo that I'm training with on that day, and then put the turrets back exactly for my duty ammo. So that is a great advantage on this scope that is not really something I have to worry about on my other rifles. I don't get enough duty ammo for this thing that I can actually do a firing zero. I can do a zero confirmation with a couple of shots occasionally, but I don't have enough duty ammo to actually go out and train with my duty ammo on my own time, or to actually re-zero the rifle every week with duty ammo. So that feature is really great. And overall, the Weaver has been really a fairly reliable optic. It does have an illuminated reticle on it, which is mandatory in a first focal plane optic in a duty situation, because most of the time I'm going to have to deploy this rifle, it's going to be after dark. The last time I did it, I had deployed, it was after dark. The suspect was down in a ravine about 200 yards away, and I had just enough illumination on the optic to pick him up. I still had the scope dialed back to about 8 power, and the illuminated reticle allowed me to very easily pick up the crosshair on the really scattered wooded background. So that worked really, really well. I really don't have any complaints about this optic used in this kind of situation. It will even work fairly well as a competition optic, but the issue that you run into when you start trying to use it as a competition optic is the 15 power top end can be a little limiting, but moreover the reticle is going to be a little limiting. I don't like the enhanced mil-dot reticle when I have to hold for elevation and windage, because I end up holding in dead space. With this rifle, where my longest shot is probably going to be under 300 yards, then that's not an issue with having to hold out in a dead space. I'm more than likely going to be holding on the main scale, and then I'm going to be good to go. Talking about holding, you'll notice here on the buttstock, I've got a little dope chart stuck on there, and that just allows me to really quickly and easily reference what I need on the scope as far as elevation. It's a 308. The load that I'm shooting through here is a pretty standard 308, so if I need a quick and dirty dope, then I can just go with what's in my brain. But it's nice to have details, especially later on when you have to justify something in court. So I do have that table there that I can quickly and easily reference if I need. You'll notice the tape is peeling up here. My breath has been getting under there, and the condensation has been causing the packing tape to peel up, so I'm going to have to cut that away and tape it back down. But that has worked very well now for probably about 5 years, I think, somewhere close to that. So that's good to go. Now the mount that I'm using on here, this is a LaRue OBR mount, And the LaRue OBR mounts, I'm not a big fan of them if you have to constantly take it off and put it back on, but they do a really good job of staying locked down. And because it has a locking lever on the backside, I don't have to worry about pulling it loose on any gear. As I said, it's worked just fine. This is a 0 MOA mount. Again, this is a relatively short range system, so I don't really need an incline mount on it. An incline mount is not going to hurt anything. A 20 MOA mount will work just fine on here, but the 0 MOA mount is good to go. That is the rifle overall. Now, things I would change if I had plenty of downtime and I was going to totally tear the system down and start again. Pretty much all you have to do is look at our Mega Arms MA10 16-inch 308 build, and that is what I would build this into. If I was going to start with this system here, then probably two major things that I would do right away is I would rip the Noveske barrel out of here, and I would go with something like the 16-inch Rainier Arms Select 308 barrel. Those barrels are more than accurate enough for a law enforcement job, and the Select barrels have a guarantee on them, so if you get a Select barrel in, put it in. It's not performing to your satisfaction. You have a limited time window where you can return it. Not a lot of barrel manufacturers will allow you to put a barrel on, shoot it, and then still return it and get your money back. And I've been pretty happy with the 16-inch Select barrel that we put on our MA10. So it's really good to go, and the weight is about perfect for this type of rifle. Now on the buttstock, as I mentioned, I would probably go with a lighter weight buttstock, either a Magpul UBR or a Magpul Mo, or even something like a CTR stock. I like an adjustable length of pull because you may be running different situations where you're wearing body armor. This is the correct length of pull for when I'm wearing soft armor. If I was wearing a plate carrier, this really doesn't work well. This is going to cause me some issues with my plate carrier. If I had a CTR or a UBR stock on here, then I can very quickly adjust that stock in to account for the plate carrier. So those really are the two spots that I would change things. Other than that, I mentioned the trigger. I might eventually go with a Geissele SSAE trigger on it. But the rifle has worked very well the way it is. Now, if you have some cash to really drop on an optic, something like the Bushnell SMRS 1 to 8.5 optic is a really excellent option. You throw that 1 to 8.5 on a 16-inch barrel with an adjustable stock, and you can very quickly go from a standoff DMR style rifle to an entry rifle just by dialing that optic down and collapsing the stock a little bit. Now you can go through the door or drop into the back of a stack on an entry team and actually fight with that rifle inside. Now, this rifle is really a great option, and the way this rifle is set up could be used as a SWAT team sniper rifle if you so desired. Everything that makes it a good DMR rifle makes it a good SWAT sniper rifle. The big thing is it's a little bit heavy. It is probably about the same overall length as the rifle I carried as a SWAT sniper. And I am a big fan of semi-automatic rifles for law enforcement sniper work because really you still have to move and get into a position when there may be an active shooter out there, when the target may not be stationary, the target may be moving. And if I'm going to come around the corner and encounter a lethal threat, I would much rather do so with a semi-automatic 308 than a bolt-action 308. You can much more effectively gunfight with a semi-automatic rifle than a bolt-action rifle. And yeah, you still have a secondary rifle or secondary weapon. You can switch to your handgun, but that takes time. This rifle's already in your hands. One thing I will talk about really quick on the ammunition that I use, because I know you guys will ask. I use Hornady Tap 155 grain. It does use 155 grain AMAX bullet. This is what our firearms department chose for our cartridge. I believe we're in the process of changing to a slightly different round. I'm not entirely sure though. You'll notice what I did do here to signify that that is what is in this magazine, because I've got several different types of tap on the shelf here. I just took the sticker off the box and stuck it on the side of the magazine. So all my duty magazines, I have this sticker on it telling me that I do have 155 grain tap in this magazine. So if for some reason I'm out shooting this rifle with 168 grain tap in it, then I know, hey, I need to make sure I put the correct ammo back in here. So that's why I have the sticker on there, and that is the ammo that we use. The 155 grain tap has been acceptably accurate in this rifle. This is a 1 in 10 twist barrel, so it's a little bit fast for that 155 grain round. That hasn't really caused a problem, but it hasn't played to the strengths of this rifle either. If I was choosing a round to run in this, I would probably go with the 178 grain AMAX based ammunition, but we're trying to choose a round that works well in all the DM rifles, including the M14s, which have a slower twist barrel, I believe, than this one. So that's why we're going with that ammo. And that is about it for this overall rifle. If you guys have any questions on the AR10 here or anything I've discussed on this video, please leave it in the comments section below or send it to us on Facebook or Twitter. If you've liked this video, please make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And as always, get out and shoot.